Alright, we're back, of course, talking FF7. We're talking some Rebirth, and also Part 3 to a certain degree. We have another interview with Naoki Hamaguchi from the PlayStation Partner Awards, this time with 4Gamer. This was an interview they did with people who got the Grand Award, which was Miyazaki and Hamaguchi for Elden Ring and FF7 Rebirth, respectively. Anyways, I'd seen Genki put out a tweet today, a translation from one little bit of the Hamaguchi interview. The interview is actually a decent size, but there's not really a ton of things worth talking about. The one that Genki put out was about the trophies specifically. He's talking a lot about the trophies lately, isn't he? There's actually more to the answer than what Genki translated. I think is worth discussing a bit. He also talks about making the next game and, obviously wanting to deliver a good game, and also a message to the fans waiting on the third game. So a couple things worth talking about from this. Also, this Q&A that we're looking at here, at least the one that I pulled up from 4Gamer, has the Tifa Kiss question that we talked about with our last video. So I was under the impression that maybe Hamaguchi just did a bunch of different interviews during like the PlayStation Partner Awards or something. But the fact that like Genki's Kiss question tweet linked to a different article entirely than this 4Gamer one leads me to believe that they're probably just taking questions from the audience or something, or from journalists in the audience or whatever. Anyways, let's hop into it, and of course we are on some auto-translate type shit. The next game will be the final part of the project. Please tell us your enthusiasm. I believe that the next game requires the same mindset as the previous and current games. We are making it to be a trilogy, so we are positioning it as the true final game. Also, since it is an IP with many fans, including myself, I think that a great many people are looking forward to how it will end. The entire team is developing the game with the hope of finishing it in a way that meets those expectations. So this is something kind of interesting to think about going into the third game eventually. We're obviously a couple years away from that. Is they're wanting to conclude it in a way that meets expectations of the fans. But the thing is, I love Remake, I love Rebirth. They both had relatively controversial endings. I'd say maybe Rebirth more than Remake. The Remake, you're fighting Whisper Harbinger and all that other singularity shit or whatever. There's definitely like things that are a little confusing about the ending, right? That maybe don't sit well with a lot of people. But Rebirth's ending, the way they handled Aerith's fate. Is she dead? Is she alive? The whole thing, like, that's obviously quite controversial. So it kind of makes you wonder how they're maybe going to hit the mark with the end of the trilogy entirely. Like, what are they going to do with the ending of the third game? Are they going to go for like another shock value kind of like what's happening sort of ending or something? Or are they going to conclude it for sure? Are they going to leave it vague so there's discussion going into the future, which is something they love, based on the ending of Remake and Rebirth. They want people talking about the shit. Are they going to want that to continue after the trilogy's done? The thing is, when you really think about it, there's nothing to really base the ending of the trilogy off of when it comes to the original game, just because it just kind of ends, right? Like, Holy and Livestream stop Meteor, and then it just cuts to black, rolls credits, and then 500 years in the future, right? I know On the Way to a Smile picks up after FF7, and it's like between FF7 and Advent Children, right? But I don't know if anything is like directly following the exact events, the ending of FF7, like picks up right instantly where the game ended at, right? So I don't know if they have anything to really base that off of, so it might all be kind of new, so I don't know what they're going to do, but they're obviously going to be alluding to the future, because we know this rolls into Advent Children eventually, right? We've been told that constantly by the devs. So there'll probably be an ending that isn't necessarily vague, but maybe sets up the future of the FF7 story, where it goes or something like that. I don't know. Maybe we'll see Sephiroth in like the live stream, not fully dead, connecting himself to Cloud or whatever the hell they're going to do. I don't know. Anyways, I just hope at least with the ending of the third game, they can come up with something that's more universally loved than, like, let's say the ending of Remake and the ending of Rebirth, right? Something that, has the majority of the fans happy. Did you reconsider the concept of the project in light of the reaction to this game? There have been no major changes. Regarding this work, I am confident in the game design and design balance that I imagined. I believe that it has been properly delivered to the users. However, one thing I regret about this work is that the percentage of users who played all the content was very low because the amount of content was too much. I think that increasing the amount of content itself was not a mistake, but since we linked it to trophies, the rate of trophy acquisition is extremely low. In the next work, I'm thinking of making it easier to obtain trophies. I know here lately we looked at like a lot of quotes from Hamaguchi talking about the trophies for Rebirth, but this one's a little more intricate, where he's talking about like trophy acquisition and it being tied to all the extra content that Rebirth has compared to Remake. So I thought it was kind of interesting. I'm still of the mindset though that I think the platinum should be a little bit easier to get. Not necessarily like easy, but it shouldn't be tied to doing like every little fucking thing the game has to offer, right? Because that's the biggest problem with the Rebirth trophy, the platinum trophy specifically, is that you have to do everything. You have to beat every fucking minigame on like the hardest difficulty possible, right? The place where there's a little bit of leniency is the piano minigame, where they don't require you to get an S, which is surprising. I don't know why they wouldn't. I'm glad they didn't. But you still have to get like an A on 6 of the songs. The biggest problem with the platinum grind in Rebirth is the Johnny trophies, because that's what requires you to do kind of like everything, right? That's what requires you to beat all the certain minigames on hard and whatever, right? That's what makes it such a grind. If you got rid of like all 3 of the Johnny trophies, I feel like the grind wouldn't be that difficult to get a platinum. Even with the Johnny trophies, it's them setting the limits of like, you have to get like the highest score possible in all these minigames. That is, I guess, technically the actual problem. They could have made it to where you just got to beat all the minigames to a certain degree. Like, a certain score or something, or you just got to beat like the first couple of scores. Like with the workout mini game, maybe you just have to beat like the first 2 dudes, but like beating Jules isn't a requirement or something. Like I don't know, but they set it all to like maximum, right? And that's like the biggest issue for a lot of people. Actually, since we're talking about the platinum, I like to update you guys occasionally when I'm working towards like trophies and platinums for Square Enix games, and I'm actually gonna get the platinum for Rebirth here relatively soon. I've actually been full on grinding the shit out of the game lately ever since I hopped back into it. I'm currently going through hard mode right now, and that's the last trophy I need is to finish the game on hard mode. It's honestly a pretty good feeling just because I've been telling you guys most of this year that I wasn't going to get the platinum for Rebirth because I was never going to commit to getting good at particular minigames like the piano minigame, for example, which once I actually committed to doing it, wasn't really that hard. Like, I'd done the piano minigame a few times throughout my playthrough of Rebirth. Every time I got like a new piece of music, I'd give it a shot. I'd normally get like a C or something, so it wasn't like the worst score possible, but I wasn't too far from an A. But I just couldn't really like wrap my mind around the concept of the minigame. But like, I have a thing where like, if something's frustrating for me, and I can't like do a minigame or something in the game, if I take a break from it for a while, which I did with Rebirth, I didn't play it for a good chunk of this year so far until hopping back into it here recently. I'll hop back in, and like a lot of the mini games that I was struggling with on my initial playthrough, I just knocked out really quickly, like Glide to Chocobo, like the piano mini game, and the workout mini game. I don't necessarily have like pro gamer tips for anything. If you're like struggling with some of the simulator fights, like I used Optinoob's guides on YouTube, fan-fucking-tastic. I couldn't recommend them enough. In terms of like the piano mini game, I practiced a lot of the songs on like the lowest like note speed, and then bumped it up one more, just like the second one after that. And that helped me. Like something about the notes going faster makes you get more grades. At least for me, it did. But if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I actually knocked out like a couple of the tracks on my first try on like the slowest note speed, like the Barrett theme and I think like the Tifa theme or something, just really quickly, really easily. For some reason, I just like grasped the fucking minigame really, really fast. And that's what the workout minigame is, one that I was absolutely dreading just because I absolutely fucking hated the workout minigame from Remake. And it took me a little while, but it wasn't like actually that much of a grind. Like when I hop back into it, again, I sucked my first playthrough. The chick you play against for like a practice round essentially absolutely decimated me on my first playthrough when it came to Rebirth, and I just never tried it again. Just that one time I was like, I can't even beat the first chick. I'm not even gonna do it at all. And coming back into it, I knocked out her and the 2 dudes before Jules pretty much on my first try. I think I had to maybe do like one of the guys like a second or third time or something, but it wasn't really that hard. It was the Jules one that took me like an hour plus to get. And then the best thing you can do is mute it for one, and then you just got to figure out the rhythm, right? You got to figure out which side you want to start on. If you want to start with L1 or R1, because that factors into where the L2 or R2 minigame happens, because you obviously got to do like the tapping, or you got to do like the half push and then push all the way for like the green one. And whichever side you start on is where that minigame will happen, right? If you start with R1, it'll always be R2. So you just got to kind of figure out which side you want to start on. You just got to get used to the rhythm, and you can't fuck up. If you fuck up one time, you got to restart. That's really all it is. It's the longest minute and a half of your fucking life every time. Jules will always fuck up at the beginning and like the last 10 seconds, and he will get ahead of you no matter how fast you're going, right? Somewhere in like the middle, kind of like late end of the minigame. He will always surpass you, but he's going to fuck up too. You just got to keep at it, and you just can't fucking mess up. You mess up one time, got to restart. Some people also like to cover up like half their TV or their monitor where you can only see Tifa, you can only focus on Tifa. I didn't have to do that. And some people like to count out loud. So like when you first start it, you do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and kind of get the rhythm down like that. I'm better off in like pure silence and just hearing like the click of the controller, and like that's how I can like keep track of the rhythm. There's a couple different ways you can like kind of make the minigame a little bit easier for you, but it's always going to be difficult. Anyways, last little bit here. Finally, please give a message to the users. It has been quite a while since this work was released in February, but I've traveled to areas such as Japan, North America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, and have created opportunities to contact the media and fan communities. I realize that the IP called Final Fantasy VII that was sent from Japan more than 20 years ago has become something that is loved by many people in many countries. There's a goddamn train in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Right now, we are developing the final work of the trilogy, and we want to finish it as a title that really reaches many people. Please look forward to it. I just hope when it comes to the next game that they stick the landing with the ending, because that's the only part of when it comes to like Remake and Rebirth. I have like complaints here and there about certain stuff, but it's like the endings of those games are not like my favorite thing. They're not the worst either. I've played worse games. I've seen worse endings in games, right? But it's like it's just super convoluted all the time, and also like I don't know if there's gonna be like a payoff to all the shit we've dealt with so far with like the worlds inside the planet and the different whispers and the defying fate and all this other shit. If there's gonna be any sort of like interesting kind of payoff from that, or if it's just gonna be this is just the ending of FF7 again, right? Like I want there to be something new. I just don't know what that is that I want. I'm not worried about like the beginning and middle when it comes to the third game, because they're probably just going to copy the Rebirth formula to a certain degree, maybe improve upon it or whatever. But like Rebirth itself, like the majority of the game is great, right? There's just little things here and there, and what what they did with Aerith's fate at the ending, that I'm just like, ugh, dude, they could have done something better than that, right? So it's just like, I'm not worried about the majority of the third game. I'm just worried how they're going to stick the landing and what they're going to leave us with eventually. But ultimately, I just want the ending of the game to be good, right? I just want them to find a way to end it in a way that pleases the majority of the fan base. There's always going to be people that don't like shit. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like the ending. But I just hope that like the majority of us do enjoy it. Of course, pass off to you guys. So what are your thoughts on the third game? How do you think they're going to end it? We know what the ending's supposed to be. They're obviously going to copy that to a certain degree. But how do you think they're actually going to conclude the third game, or conclude the trilogy in general? When it comes to the discussion of the trophies and the platinum for Rebirth, where are you at on that? Are you close to the platinum? Do you already have the platinum? Are you stuck on particular trophies or minigames? Where are you at on that? Do you even care? And a lot of people don't give a fuck. I don't know why I care. I shouldn't even give a fuck, but I do. I like to go for trophies for some reason. Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. System works in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @HamaGOATchi. That's it. Bye.
We used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.